very much, Commissioner. I think trust, well, it is one of the driving principles of the Association of ACCIS, and we certainly will take it as a good piece of advice that we sort of continue supporting the credit ecosystem from this position of trust. You should count the credit reference industry among the ones that are advocating more favorably on the Commission's original proposal. And in fact, when we meet, for example, members of the European Parliament and member states, even though we're not, of course, as you can imagine, 100% in support of every single provision there, we think that it is a very good starting point and already a very well-researched and balanced piece of work. So I can congratulate you and your services for the good work that has been done on this particular piece. So I think we're coming now to the end, and it is my job to wrap this up. It has been a long day of exchanges and meetings. We started off this morning with a presentation by the governor, Mr. Pierre Wunsch. He talked about the Belgian credit market, and he gave us a lot of interesting insights and stats. And I think, as I told you already, I think one of the key takeaways is that some of the new forms of credit that we are seeing, like flash credit, I think he said, instant credit, these are things that should be regulated, should come under regulation, and we should make sure that there is a sound and robust assessment of credit worthiness for consumers, also when they take this type of products. Then we moved on to the particular panel on the Consumer Credit Directive that was led by Stuart. It was a very interesting discussion. I would even perhaps paint it as a discussion overly dominated by our guest from the European Parliament, Mr. Sokol, that spoke non-stop. But I think it was very useful to understand, at least from him, that in terms of the data that can be used for credit worthiness assessments, we have to be flexible and we cannot introduce rigidities. I think someone mentioned in the panel that it is not an exact science and that we need some guidance, we need some orientations, and the European Banking Authority already provides that. And this is, again, what the Commission was saying. But we have listened in the European Parliament diverging voices, people asking for much more sort of strict and close lists of data. Mr. Sokol was not of that opinion, and frankly, we hope that his view prevails eventually. Then we had a second discussion, regulatory discussion on artificial intelligence. We learned from industry experts that artificial intelligence can be fully explainable. That's very good and very encouraging. And we also understood that the ECB, which provides an expert view on that file, believes that some of the existing techniques that are captured currently in the definition of AI, in fact, maybe they are not even AI, or at least they're not advanced, or the AI that should be the object of supervisory attention, and that they are not certainly high risk. The supervisor is very much let's say, aware of how credit scoring works and what algorithms go into it. And they have been supervising this industry for a long time by proxy, by supervising the banks. And the message, I think, was also quite clear. And we really hope that this message is carried forward in the legislative discussions with Council and Member States. That ended somehow the regulatory part of the conference. And just before the lunch break, Natalia, hello Natalia, took us on a world tour of innovation in credit reporting. And we discovered a little bit, we took a sneak view of the metaverse and what that means. And in this world tour, I took away that Europe is not that bad. I mean, we tend to think that jurisdictions like Asia and the United States are far ahead of us. But things like open banking, for example, we seem to be more at the forefront. And we heard that it is very important, open banking, for credit worthiness assessments. My catchphrase of your presentation and the presentation of your team was that either you move digital or you move dinosaur. So we need, as an industry, to make that choice. And I think most of you are making that choice, and I encourage those that are still hesitating to make the right choice. Then we had lunch. Thank you again very much to the National Bank of Belgium for having fed us today. We continued after lunch with a fireside chat on data protection and credit referencing activities. And we learned quite a lot of things about the role of data protection authorities in not just regulating our industry and providing guidance, but also enforcing the rules. No? I think there was a preference for having the data protection authority more as an authority that would guide, that would sort of coach, not so much come with a stick to punish. And I think CENIL, for example, which was the authority that we had here in the room, was particularly apt at combining these two roles. And also, I have to pay tribute to Kiki, to the moderator, that was not shy of putting the hot potatoes on the table and discuss things like what happens with public information, publicly available data, how can that be used for creditworthiness assessments? And also what happens with legitimate interest as a lawful ground for processing credit data. Is that a robust legal ground? And we heard some reassuring voices from Sophie, from the CENIL expert, that yes, for the time being, yes. So let's keep it up on that front. Then we had some concrete examples of innovation, and Paul facilitated a session with 4 entrepreneurs, not very often, at least here in Brussels, and from a trade association, I have the chance to listen and to talk and to see people that are moving the market and creating innovation. So it was very useful. We had innovations coming from the open banking space, innovations coming from the fraud detection space, also some innovators that explain ESG factors and how sustainability data could be used in lending and in credit scoring. And then we had a last panel discussion that was led by our president, by Marius, on how can we engage our clients as credit information providers in supporting their delivery of responsible credit. And my key takeaway there is that we were talking, is a kind of coined expression, responsible credit. But people were saying that, in addition to credit being responsible, these days it has to be instant, it has to be convenient, it has to be transparent. So maybe responsible credit is also all of these things, because the industry is evolving and, of course, trying to make an effort to facilitate the onboarding financially of clients when they need it, and they need it today in e-commerce context. So this is important also in an e-commerce context, to facilitate access that is instant, that is transparent to credit. And we discussed also in that panel the new emerging player, the BNPL, the buy now, pay later provider, and to what extent that new player needs to still develop an engagement with the existing credit data infrastructure, that the information is reported so that consumers that are using this facility are not left in the dark of the credit data infrastructure, that the information is transferred to the data infrastructure so that other BNPL players or lenders, traditional lenders, can have access to that. And then we had the keynote, the closing keynote of the commissioner that has kindly stayed here, perhaps to examine me now as to what I am going to say. But I think he gave us a very good and very detailed overview of the Consumer Credit Directive, which is in fact just a single piece out of the 22 initiatives of the wider European consumer agenda. And here, and this is not a topic that we have discussed today, but I would like to put it on the table also for you and in front of the commissioner. He referred to the importance of consumer education, and in this context, financial education. And as you know, I would like just to mention to you that earlier this year, in the context of the European Money Week, we have put forward our contribution on financial education. which is showcasing the very interesting initiatives that many of you are undertaking to educate consumers. And there are a lot of things, gamifications, they are, of course, websites, they are programs of financial education, some more, let's say, traditional, other, I would say, a little bit more innovative. So if you haven't reviewed this document, just go onto the website of ACCIS and have a look at it. So it was a full day of information, but I would say that as important as what happened in the room was, it was the exchange that you had in the corridors. And it is my pleasure to have been able to provide that opportunity, that networking opportunity that it was very much, I think, missing somehow after a couple of years without having seen you around. So I hope you enjoyed it, that you sort of reconnected with your friends in the industry. And I hope that from this point onwards, unless we go on to the metaverse and we do a conference in the metaverse, we can still see each other on a regular basis. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much to the speakers for having helped putting this together. Thank you again very much to the National Bank of Belgium and the team. And thank you very much also to Adam and QED that have, as conference organizers, supported us in making this a success. So thank you and see you next year.